Alright, so I got some pretty massive updates here for you guys on the former and unfortunately potential future president of the United States, Donald J. Trump, who apparently, according to himself at least, is set to be arrested as soon as this Tuesday. We've had some other reports that are saying it could be tonight, some other ones saying it could be Wednesday. We'll get to all of that, but according to him and his screaming into the void Truth Social rant here, he's set to be arrested. Now, this is not in regards to the Georgia case that's ongoing. It's not in regards to other cases that are sort of pending against Donald Trump. This one seems to be the one that I thought would produce the least likelihood of consequences for Trump, but this one is the one that's surrounding Stormy Daniels and the hush money payment that Trump made through Michael Cohen and the potential violations of financial laws that he may have broken. So here directly from the big wet boy himself, Donald Trump, he says, "Our nation is now third world and dying. The American dream is dead." I kind of agree with that, but for entirely different reasons of what Donald Trump would say. But he says the radical left anarchists, I'm assuming he's talking about like Joe Biden there as the radical left anarchist in the equation, but he says he's stolen, and he spelled it Stalin, our presidential election, and with it, the heart of our country. American patriots are being arrested and held in captivity like animals. You mean prison? You mean just like regular U.S. prisons, I guess, but treated like animals, while criminals and leftist thugs are allowed to roam the streets, killing and burning with no retribution. You know, as a leftist thug myself, I do enjoy our weekend activities. We go around, we kill and burn with no retribution. It's a great pastime that we have going on in this country, but he adds that millions are flooding through our open borders. And again, you know, maybe a cheap shot here, but come on, man, with the spelling. I mean, I know it's Trump. He's rage tweeting probably from his like golden toilet or some shit like that, but borders with an A, I guess. There's no fact checking or no spell checking procedures on Truth Social, but he says many are coming from prisons and mental institutions. Again, just making shit up here. Crime and inflation are destroying our very way of life. And then he goes to page 2, and here's where he gets to the meat of it. Now, illegal leaks from a corrupt and highly political Manhattan District Attorney's Office, which has allowed new records to be set in violent crime and whose leader is funded by George Soros, indicate that, with no crime being able to be proven, and based on an old and fully debunked by numerous other prosecutors fairy tale, the far and away leading Republican candidate and former president of the United States of America will be arrested on Tuesday of next week. Protest, take our nation back. Okay, so would like a little bit of clarification, maybe given your track record when it comes to inciting some violent actions from your supporters. Maybe let's get a little bit of a clarification here on what exactly you mean by protest, take our nation back, in response to you potentially having to go face this trial and maybe have some consequences. I mean, listen, at the end of the day, I honestly don't think that this is going to be the case that gets Trump landed behind bars or something like that, but it seems to think that he's reacting almost like that would be the case. So it's kind of an interesting response from him for a number of different reasons there, but again, we have some conflicting reports. Trump said, according to some of his knowledge, now they've walked a little bit of this back. His team has walked some of this back. They say it's Tuesday. Some other people are saying it could happen as soon as tonight. So we could have some interesting stuff go down in New York tonight or in Florida, depending on where Trump is when this actually ends up happening. But some other ones say Wednesday as well. So I'll keep you guys updated when we actually get confirmation on what exactly is happening. We also have some footage here and some reports coming out that they are putting some steel barricades outside of the Manhattan criminal court, I guess anticipating maybe some semblance of Trump supporters will be showing up to try to bust him out of chains or something like that. I honestly don't even think they're going to put him in handcuffs. I don't think they're going to do like the traditional perp walk or anything like that, given the given the circumstances of what this actually is, but they're prepping for it. Apparently, like, there's going to be some sort of a backlash. But now just a little bit more in terms of the meat of what he's actually potentially going to be charged with in this instance. So here from the New York Times, they say, inside the payoff to a porn star that could lead to Trump's indictments. All right, so here from Michael Rothfeld, he says the Manhattan District Attorney Alvin L. Bragg has signaled that he is preparing to seek felony charges against Mr. Trump. And they say Mr. Bragg is expected to accuse him of concealing a $130,000 hush money payment that Michael Cohen, his lawyer and fixer, made to Ms. Daniels on the eve of the 2016 presidential election. Again, the implication there being that this was an action that was taken to help the Trump campaign, which is like a key linchpin of this case that they're trying to bring. They're trying to convince the jury in this instance that this was basically a political act that was done. It wasn't something that was personal to protect his brand or his own, a personal relationship with Melania, that, this story about him sleeping with a porn star and cheating on his wife would get out to the public. So that's an important thing that they're trying to prove here, that it was an action that was taken by the Trump campaign at the time. But they say a conviction would be likely to hinge on prosecutors proving that Mr. Trump reimbursed Mr. Cohen and falsified business records when he did so, possibly to hide an election law violation. Okay, so there's a number of different working pieces they're trying to fit together here to make this case more ironclad. So you have the fact that this was done in a political nature. You have sort of the cover up behind the scenes, him going through Michael Cohen, a third party, to make this payment. So she would be all hush hush before the election was about to take place. And then you have the falsification of the records on the back end. And so you have all of this that is building up to basically my reaction to this news, which is that I don't think, again, that this is going to be the thing that gets Trump taken down. If it was, that would be absolutely hilarious. That of all of the different criminal things that Donald Trump and other U.S. presidents have done throughout recent history, that, this would be the thing that ends up throwing one of them behind bars. You have some hush money payments to a porn star because he didn't want the story to leak to help his campaign. I mean, it's just such a ridiculous story. I mean, it's perfect Trump fashion here that this is the kind of thing we would be talking about. But they finish off here saying that it would not be a simple case. Prosecutors are expected to use a legal theory that has not been assessed in New York courts. Again, kind of giving the idea that maybe this isn't as strong of a case as they may think it is. They say raising the possibility that a judge could throw out or limit the charges. And the episode has been examined by both the Federal Election Commission and federal prosecutors in New York, and neither of them took action against Mr. Trump. So it kind of does seem like it's a little bit of a stretch that they're going to be able to get. I think it's a 4-year sentence that he could potentially be facing on the upper ends of the possibilities of this case. But again, I would be absolutely shocked if he serves any time for this or if there's any real consequences from this. But, I stand, firmly in that position. I hope that I'm corrected on that, and that maybe this is something that gets him thrown behind bars, mostly, again, just because that would be absolutely hilarious. A hilarious way for Donald Trump to go down, especially after he's already launched his 2024 election. But now we get to some of the responses here from some other GOP candidates and pundits and stuff like that. So here from Vivek Ramaswamy, who I've talked about on this channel before. I think this guy's an absolute clown. He is a capitalist demon through and through, and all of the policies that I've seen him talk about have been either sort of distracting, nonsense, virtue signaling, culture war bullshit, or economic policies that I think would be absolutely disastrous. But he is riding full speed ahead on the Trump train here, saying, "I call on my fellow GOP candidates, Ron DeSantis and Nikki Haley, to join me in condemning the potential Trump indictment, because those of us running against Trump can most credibly call on the Manhattan DA to abandon this disastrously politicized prosecution. I pray that the DA does the right thing. We're skating on thin ice as a country right now. We need a national revival, not a national divorce." Okay, so, I mean, again, kind of pushing this idea, low-key, kind of threats coming out. I mean, not aggressively, we are going to do some sort of an attack if he's arrested or something, but kind of pushing the idea that if a president from a particular party is prosecuted for crimes, that that's going to lead to a civil war or some split between the country. I mean, listen, this is pretty simple. I believe, at least firmly on a principled level, that any politician, any political figure, no matter how powerful they are, no matter if they're the former or current president, should be fully prosecuted for crimes that they commit, whether that's having to do with some campaign finance law and some porn star hush money payment or something like that, or whether it's to do with war crimes, which every single modern U.S. president has been guilty of. There's that famous Noam Chomsky quote where he basically outlines that if the standards of the Nuremberg trials back after World War II were applied in a modern sense, every single post-World War II president would have been hung by those same standards. So that's kind of the guideline that I usually operate in this kind of a circumstance. But what they're basically arguing here is that you can get to a position in the United States where if you are politically powerful enough, if you have, a raging base of supporters that is strong enough or large enough, then you're basically above the law. I mean, that's kind of the argument that they're making. Oh, we can't go after him for any prosecution because that would be politically charged and it would divide the country. And it's no, I mean, you have to have some semblance of, legal standards that are applied to everybody across the board, not some elite class that gets to just be above the fray regardless of what the actual facts on the ground are. So that would be my response to that part of it. We also have this part of it as well here from Mediaite, we have some MAGA supporters who are now demanding, apparently, that Ron DeSantis basically like send the Florida National Guard to, I guess, like form a moat around Mar-a-Lago to prevent, Donald Trump being arrested. I mean, honestly, if this happened, I would love to see it. I think this would be hilarious. You have like a standoff between Florida, Governor Ron DeSantis with the National Guard, and then like these, I guess, I don't know who would be actually conducting the arrest in that kind of a circumstance. Maybe some federal agents. I'm not exactly sure, but would love to see this. I think that would be absolutely hilarious. Although I don't think that is any real chance of happening. But we do have a response here from DeSantis himself. As far as I know, this is the only real thing that he has talked about in regards to this. So he was asked a question, basically, what does he think about this upcoming potential arrest of Trump? Here was his response. He kind of throws a little bit of shade at Trump for, I guess, having sex with a porn star, but beyond that, I mean, this is a pretty weak comeback here. So let's see how Ron DeSantis responds. Again, keep in mind he has been slipping in the polls relative to Trump. His chances of winning the presidency or winning the Republican primary are dwindling as we go on, so he kind of needs to make a move here. Let's see what he's got.
From the Florida Standard, we wanted to know what your thoughts are on the rumored Trump indictment, and if you have any role in it. If charges are brought on him, will you have any role in extradition to New York?
So I've seen rumors swirl. I have not seen any facts yet, and so I don't know what's going to happen. But I do know this: the Manhattan District Attorney is a Soros-funded prosecutor. And so he, like other Soros-funded prosecutors, they weaponize their office to impose a political agenda on society at the expense of the rule of law and public safety. He has downgraded over 50% of the felonies to misdemeanors. He says he doesn't want to even have jail time for the vast, vast majority of crimes. And what we've seen in Manhattan is we've seen the crime rate go up, and we've seen citizens become less safe. And so you're talking about this situation with, and look, I don't know what goes into paying hush money to a porn star to secure silence over some type of alleged affair. I can't speak to that. But what I can speak to.
Okay, so there you basically have it. Throws out George Soros' name a bunch of times, as many times as he can, to again try to demonize that process. And look, I don't know, maybe some of these candidates who were running for these positions within the Manhattan DA, maybe their campaigns were funded by George Soros. Not exactly sure what exactly that has to do with the actual facts of the case. Either he committed a crime or he didn't commit a crime, and they'll, adjudicate that throughout the courts. Now, you could say that, like, oh, some of them are politically charged. Some of these people ran campaigns on trying to, prosecute Trump for these crimes. But at the end of the day, if they're crimes, then they're crimes. It doesn't really matter, whether or not some prosecutor is trying to make that their priority. But beyond that, I mean, obviously at the end there, he throws a little bit of shade by, doing sort of like the, what it reminded me of was what Trump does with the Meatball Ron nickname that he didn't, but kind of did give Ron DeSantis, where he'll come out and he'll say, like, many people are calling him Meatball Ron. Everybody's saying Meatball Ron. I don't agree with it, but some people are saying that his name is Meatball Ron. And it's like, you're not directly saying it, but you're implying that a bunch of other people are saying it. So that's what Ron DeSantis just did there with Stormy Daniels. He's not coming out and, like, criticizing Donald Trump for potentially having an affair with Stormy Daniels, but he's saying, like, oh, I don't know what goes in to pushing back against that type of an allegation. So there's basically the limitations of what it looks like is Ron DeSantis' ability to go after Donald Trump, as he is potentially, or at least, we're assuming he is going to be entering the 2024 primary, which at this point, I don't really think he really has a shot. I don't think. If you look at his mannerisms, if you look at his rhetoric, if you look at his policies, there's just not much differentiating him from Donald Trump in a good way from the Republican-based perspective that would give him an edge over Trump. And at the same time, so that's on policy, at the same time, rhetorically, he just doesn't have it. I mean, you have Donald Trump. There was just one, True Social that he put out that I didn't get to cover in this video. I forgot to include it. But basically, Donald Trump is coming out here and accusing Ron DeSantis, or implying that Ron DeSantis might be like a pedo gay groomer. Okay, so that's where Donald Trump is right now, right? Donald Trump is willing to go to the mat. He's willing to be as dirty and as aggressive as possible. Ron DeSantis does not have that. He doesn't have that juice in him. He doesn't have the charisma that Donald Trump has. So at this point, I think that Ron DeSantis' chances of potentially winning the primary, the longer that he stays out of it, he's slipping in the polls more and more and more. You have a lot of other Republicans that are turning against him. It's just not looking great for Ron DeSantis, even though we are in the middle of a video right now talking about Donald Trump potentially having charges brought against him and being arrested for crimes. Still, I think the edge is definitely with Donald Trump in the primary. Now, whether or not this type of a prosecution would actually help him in the general, that's a different question. I'm much less convinced of that, but certainly this will help with Donald Trump's chances in the 2024 GOP primary, because this is going to cause his base to firmly rally around him. Now, again, we have some takes here. This one from Candace Owens, who is responding to Ron DeSantis' clip that we just watched. She says, "Anyone surprised by this? Been saying this forever. DeSantis is a good governor." Strong disagree on that, Candace, but he is establishment and will be a major disappointment to those who think otherwise. People disenchanted with Trump, sometimes rightfully, saw things in DeSantis that were never there. Okay, so even some people who have been like nominally pro DeSantis in the past, now it looks like he's losing a bit of steam with them. They're not liking how he's responding to this. They're seeing sort of the writing on the wall that Trump is inevitably going to be the guy who carries this through to the end. So, there's your basic rundown of some of the responses. So listen, again, my take here, and I'll link this down below if you want to just go refresh yourself on many of the different cases that are currently sort of pending or in limbo with Donald Trump that we might see some further action on. My basic take is I don't think that this is going to be the case that is going to get him landed behind bars or, something aggressive like that. I think that this will likely only help him in the short term because he's going to come out looking more like Teflon Don and following back in that theory. I think we would have been much better off if we had had one of the other cases that are much, stronger, have deeper implications, that are honestly more important and scandalous in my opinion than some hush money paid to a porn star or something. Seems kind of irrelevant, but I think we would have been better suited if one of those other cases had come at least first, because they would have been more ironclad. You would have had more of that substance behind it, but this is what it looks like they're going with, and I will keep you guys updated if we get any further progression on this very wild story.
Everyone is saying good Politic guy has the best politics. Believe me, no one does it like him. Believe me, everyone is saying